the light of the dark is coming. We are all up in our eyes, we are all up in our heart, we are all up in our mind, under the same sky. Not only one in blood and land, not only one on skin's color and language. We have one spirit, we are one in struggle. Let's reach our dream together.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marian, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, if any of you have questions regarding the discussion, don't hesitate to send them to us by entering them in the comment section of whatever social media platform you're watching this on, and I'll be here to relay them to our guest speaker. So let's get right on to it. Welcome to the live webinar series of ESME.ph, an e-learning marketplace for Filipino professionals, where one can develop relevant and in-demand skills through masterclasses in different fields of learning. If you want to learn more about us, feel free to visit our page at www.esme.ph. For those who are watching this on Facebook and YouTube, feel free to share this link to the stream with people who you will think will be interested in today's topic. We are inviting everyone to join us in our live learning series where seasoned experts, such as our speaker today, in various fields from agriculture and business, to marketing, to future thinking, to relationships, to health and fitness, and more, help you develop your skills and advance both in your personal life and in your career. If you're interested in learning more about the live learning series, head on over to our website. Again, it's www.esme.ph and click on the live learning tab. We hope you can join us. This webinar is in partnership with the ASEAN Youth Organization, an ASEAN-approved nonprofit organization that spreads awareness of ASEAN to over 200 million young people in Southeast Asia. This webinar is also brought to you by the Rotary and Rotaract Club of Alabang Madrigal Business Park. So I'll give you a little bit more information about our webinar today. Our topic is all about the basics of emission accounting. Today, we are going through a fast-paced life. Without us being fully aware of it, our actions often leave a huge carbon footprint. These are footprints that we don't see, but the impact it has on our society and our planet's ecological system as a whole are definitely evident. The question is, how can we measure our climate impact? Not only at home, but in our office, workplaces, or wherever we are. How can we make ourselves accountable for what we are doing to the environment? And what can ordinary people like us do to conserve and lessen our impact on the environment? The answer lies in emissions accounting, which our guest is an expert of. The guest is a PRC registered and licensed chemist from the University of the Philippines. He gained his master's degree in renewable energy and resource management from the University of South Wales and completed a program on leadership and project management for development at the Asian Institute of Management. He has been the strategic planning officer for the OxyChem Corporation, International Business Development Officer for Solar Corporation, Sustainability Analyst for ADEC Innovations, and Associate Consultant for Sustainability for GCSS Incorporated, aside from volunteering in various organizations, of course. Not only is he a chemist, he is also an associate member of the Energy Institute and a climate reality leader of the Climate Reality Project. He is an expert in renewable energy technology, hydrogen and advanced energy research, waste management practices, strategic planning, vlogging, and podcasting, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our speaker, Mr. Jonas Marie Dumdum. Oh, sir, I think you're muted.
There you go.
There you go.
So I was saying, thank you for having me. And well, I'm pleased to share a bit of what I do actually at work for GCSS, which is emissions accounting. But for those who may be skeptical about the term accounting, we will not be doing anything related to business math or accounting today. It's more of like an introduction to how emissions are determined, how the emissions are calculated, and then if you want to know more, then we can have this conversation after this webinar. So before anything else, I'd like to, well, I've been introduced earlier by the host, and thank you for that. But to give some detail about it, so what my field is more of, we're in the field of resource management, in the field of sustainability, renewables, and chemistry as part of my background. So I took my master's in the UK for renewable energy and resource management, and it's been useful for me to help shape up our discussion today when it comes to emissions. But before anything else, why are we really talking about emissions in the first place? We need to look at emissions first in the context of ourselves. Why are we having this conversation on emissions? Because emissions is a direct impact driver of climate change. And if you look at this radar map of, what was this? I think this was shoot, I forgot now. This was Yolanda, I believe. Or no, not Yolanda. In the one before, actually before Yolanda. But as you may know, the Philippines can get a lot of typhoons in a year. The trend actually is decreasing in terms of the number of storms, but increasing in intensity in the number of storms. And as a result, we are dealing more than just that right now. Like last year with Raleigh and Ulysses, we really got hard. I mean, we really got hit hard and really affected our livelihoods, and it's still impacting to this day. I mean, if you go to your local supermarket, if your um, local market, public market, you'd still see that the prices of goods are still higher. And one contributing factor, other than the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, is climate change. So, climate change is also a problem that needs to be looked at in terms of sustainable development. And I'd like to give you the definition of sustainable development, which is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. What it means is that um, we should consume what we need and not consume more than what we need. Otherwise, we're robbing that resource for um, future generations. And one way you could also look at how we could save up on the resource is actually through the lessening of emissions. And it is predicted that if we don't do anything by 2050, if you look at um, this blue bar graph here, you'd see that uh, if we don't do anything, or actually we become aggressive in the use of fossil fuels or resources that are non-renewable in nature, then we will definitely see an increase in greenhouse gas emissions by around 2050. And as a result, with the with the increase of greenhouse gases, we're also going to expect a high temperature range from between now and 2100. So what does it mean? Right now, the temperature outside probably would be around 26, 27, 28 degrees Celsius. By 2100, you're going to have to add 4 degrees to that in a given day. And that's probably like January, February, March, when it's really, really supposedly cold. But add if you put it up into like the summer months like June, July, where the temperatures could go like right now about 35 ish. So if you add 4 degrees to that, you might want to say goodbye to just going outside during the day. And there's a model that was published in a paper. No, I forgot the source of this, but what the graph actually means is that if we don't do anything by 2100, you could expect a temperature change here in the Philippines by about 4 something degrees Celsius. And that's not good because it also reflects with the global average, one, and two, because at an increase of 4 degrees during the summer, it's going to be really, really hot. The Nature Conservancy in 2018 cited these impacts by 2050 if we don't do anything. Uh, if we look at, let's say, energy footprint, if we don't do anything, then um, we'd be consuming more energy per hectare actually. But if I mean, yeah, and then if we look at water security, we're gonna have a scarcity in water, and we're going to have an increase in temperature, increase in atmospheric CO2. We'll be exposed to more air pollutants. So if you're allergic to like specific kinds of um, air pollutants, then it may not be for you by the time we get to around 2100 or 2050. And global business has actually looked at this in an overall sense, and this was from the World Economic Forum. And if you look at the top 5 global risks in terms of likelihood and impact, they've cited that it's more of the climate, extreme weather, climate action failure, natural disasters for likelihood, and for impact, climate action failure or the failure for by us to do anything. Um, then yeah, we fail. We all will fail, basically. Which comes now to um, emissions accounting. So the basis of emissions accounting are these three documents. The first is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, um, which is really like the global standard when you try to determine emissions. And then you use the ISO 14064 if you're more of an industrial or commercial type of person. No? If you have a company and you want to determine emissions and you want to certify those emissions, you look into this ISO. And then you also have like the emissions factors that come from the IPCC report or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change from the United Nations. Now, according to the according to the GHG protocol, you need to do these six things in order for you to be successful in your greenhouse gas accounting. But in the residential sense, it's more of a greenhouse gas emissions at home. You can stop here at step 4, calculate and analyze. So one by one, if we're gonna do it at home, we need to set first what are we going to measure. Is it just one person doing? I mean, one person's output, or is it like the whole family output? That's the first thing you need to think about. And is it just one house, or if you have more than one house, do you measure more than one house? Then that's also something you need to think about. Next is you need to identify where your emissions are coming from. So later I'll be explaining this further. Then you collect and organize the data, and then you calculate and analyze. So from there you could then see, okay, where am I wasteful, basically, in terms of emissions. Now, um, emissions are usually defined by this kind of approach, the 3 scopes. So when you say scope 1, it's more of the ones that you use, directly. So if you have a car uh, and you use it every day, that you could consider that as part of your scope 1 emissions. Your scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions. You did not produce that kind of energy, but you use it every day. And what we usually do here is to determine it through your electricity use. And then lastly, scope 3 are are the emission sources that come from like indirect sources, and you don't usually um, have an impact. So, for example, if you're commuting every day um, through different routes, like on Mondays and Tuesdays, you use you take the MRT. Wednesdays, Thursdays, you take the bus. So those are not not your usual emissions, but you need to do it. I mean, you could you use them every day. Sorry. So, but this is just an illustration of how business would see the 3 scopes. But from there, if you've already determined if you've already gotten the data, then you need to look at an emission factor database. And this is one this is one way you could look at it, through the emission factor database of the IPCC. So they have a tool or a website that you could just search on the conversion factors that you'll need to convert, for example, the amount of fuel that you've consumed for a particular day, month, or year, and multiply it with the conversion factor that they have. So the reason why there is a database is because there are instances that the emission factors for one country may not be applicable for the other. or if they have like an overall global emissions that you could use, that would be like the simplest you can do. But in some ways, it's not really that accurate. So if you have like a national-based emissions factor or conversion factor, then yeah, you could refer to that database as well. Now, another way you could approach emissions is actually through what we call the six Kyoto Protocol gases. And mostly, when you look at residential emissions, it's mostly these three that you look at: your CO2 output, your methane output, and your nitrous oxide output. And these are the ones that are usually calculated when you have a car or if you have a generator. And if you have emissions that have methane on it, and if you have emissions that have nitrous oxide on it, you have to account for them as well and add it to your CO2 count. And one way you do it is also through a series of conversion factors. And this one, if you look at this one, so whatever you had in methane, basically, you multiply it with these factors right here at the last side, and then add it to your carbon dioxide. Now, I've been asked this question before. How can we? I mean, it's so complicated with greenhouse gas emissions. How can you make it simpler? So one way that we've done before in a previous in one of my previous companies that I've worked with is to turn it into number of trees. So this article from UNEP says that 95 metric tons per hectare per year could be um, your conversion factor. If you have something in kilograms or tons, metric ton CO2 equivalent, then you can convert. You can multiply it with this value, and then you could, or yeah, no, not multiply. You divide it with this value, and then you could get an approximate number of trees. Another factor also you could do not per hectare but a per tree basis. And what's recommended in this paper is you divide the amount of emissions by 76 kilograms per tree, which is actually quite a useful number. And lastly, if you want to be local in your determining of how many trees, there is this paper, or there are actually a series of papers on how to determine carbon sequestration from different kinds of trees that are found in the Philippines. And you could use these numbers, I guess, to convert your carbon footprint to a number of trees per hectare per year. So, which is great because yeah, our Philippine forest cover is decreasing, overall since 1988. But if you become more mindful of the number of trees you plant based on the emissions that you've calculated per year, then you you could relate it to there. And then if you want to start planting those number of trees, then you may do so. So yeah, that ends my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you for that, Jonas. Again, to the people who are watching, please just send out your questions and I'll relay them to Jonas, and let's make this a conversation. But actually, I've prepared some questions for you already. Earlier, I mentioned that you have extra things going on. You've been vlogging and podcasting. Very interesting. So, the question is, how can you use these two mediums, so vlogging and podcasting, to inform the public about their impact on climate? Because I think it was very much reiterated that, we have such a big carbon footprint, like each of us. So I think people can really people really need to be educated about this?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of podcasts that are talking about not just emissions but also waste, uh, your energy consumption, your energy efficiency. Those are factors that contribute to emissions, and it's something that people should be really aware of in your everyday basis, especially now because, like I said, climate change became a great issue as part of COVID
Mm.
19. You wouldn't. Well, a lot of people are saying that COVID-19 wouldn't happen if we didn't have climate change, and to a certain extent, I would agree. Because future diseases will come out because our climate became warmer. Because
Mhm.
like if there were like old bacteria that uh, were frozen in time, because if
Mm,
our
yes.
conditions are not good, and then you make things warmer, then they would be happy to grow themselves and spread out across the world. It's kind of like Ebola. Actually, the most I guess it's more appropriate to use the Ebola analogy way back in the 2010s when we
Mhm.
talk about climate change because it really spread. Also, well, COVID-19 also, but a lot of people will say because it um, of something else. No, I will not mention here. That's what that something else is. But if you think about the common cold or the flu, it spread um, faster through but temperatures that are more conducive to having the common cold. It's not really extreme cold or extreme warm, but like it's just right. So when that just right temperature comes in, then a lot of people are gonna catch a cold. And it's if that just right temperature becomes more frequent and yeah, then um, we would have more cases, not just like COVID-19, but also like the common cold, and a lot of people will definitely get sick. So yeah, so um, going back to the podcasting, so there's a lot, there's a wide range of topics on Spotify that are tackling
Mm.
about it. So you could just have a search and choose which one you like because well, each one has its own way of uh, sharing their thoughts. Some of them could be too technical and the boring side. It also could be too entertaining and may not be the message is lost. But yeah, it's really just up to you. Which one would you be more more attentive and more excited to listen to?
Mhm. Yeah, I think vlogging and podcasting are very good mediums because when you're listening to a podcast, you can like do anything like hands free, and
Mm.
you're also being educated at the same time. So I think that's pretty cool. What
Mhm.
people in Spotify are doing. I have another question. I think one of the things that really struck me most about what you mentioned earlier is that if we don't do anything about our situation right now, in 2050, the the Earth is just gonna get warmer. Practically, like things are just gonna get worse. So, I wanted to ask you, what can ordinary people like us do to lessen our environmental and climate impact every day? Because of course, by then we would want something to be changed. So we have to start now.
Yeah, so I always tell people three things. One, you need to know where you spend things.
Mm.
So if you spend it on like your yeah, on like your gas, or you spend it more on your electricity, then you need to identify those and try to uh, think about ways to reduce those. So yeah, one is really just identification. Second is more of investing in something that's innovative. So The simplest way is actually just changing your light bulbs to LED. But it could be as simple measures as, let's say, using an extension wire that you can just plug on and off on the source. Because if I remember, there used to be a poster for Meralco that said, if you just really unplug your TV, whatever TV it is, you could actually reduce your electric energy consumption between 5 to 10%. So that's already a big factor right there. And lastly, you need to go as local as possible. Um, you don't really need to go far when it comes to buying your products. Um, that is not to say that online products are great, but uh, go local is actually one way to reduce your footprint, your carbon footprint. Yeah.
I see. Okay, noted. After this, I'm going to unplug all of our appliances. I'm kidding.
All
Okay, next.
unnecessary experiences. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Next question. Could you give us a brief explanation? This is more like science, like technical related. Can you give us an explanation of, or like even just an idea of what chemists do to account for the emission and climate impact of our society on our planet?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Um, well, this is kind of a science-related
Mhm.
question, so it's like really technical. Maybe you could give us an idea on how scientists or chemists or people like you do to account for the emission of, let's say, companies.
We really need to ask for the data. It's all data. So when we talk about emissions coming from scope one, so we really ask people, how much did you consume in terms of liters of gas or liters of diesel? Do you have a standby generator? How much did you consume from that? And then if you consume electricity that comes from our grid, then we need to ask, how much are you consuming in a month or in a year, or but preferably in a year. Or if we can get your monthly data bill, then that's all. I mean, monthly electric bill, then that'd be great as well. And then, although they say it's optional, but if we can get also your details on how much you spent on the commute, or how much did you spend trying to go on a vacation, for example, to places like Tagaytay or to Clark or whatever. Uh, Using third-party transport like buses. What else? If you want to go out, like planes, trains, etc. So we usually get that information, and what we do is that we calculate based on the emission or the conversion factors that are provided by international organizations, and then we total them up and then come up with a number, um, with your total number of emissions. I mean, total amount of your emissions.
Mm-hmm. And then, like you said earlier, some companies would try to do something about that by planting trees, right?
No, what I was trying to explain there is that you can simplify your contribution to the carbon footprint, the global carbon footprint, by estimating the number of trees that you would have planted if you did not do all of that.
Yes,
So,
I see.
so yeah, like if you consume, let's say, 100 kilograms of CO2, then if you divide that by the 76 kilograms per tree, then you would have around 1.25 trees, basically. That would be your equivalent of CO2. Sometimes the CO2 number that would be calculated, it's sometimes a big number, a scary number. So a lot of people don't really relate. So you relate it to something else. And one way you could relate it to something else, based on what I've shown earlier, is the number of trees you planted in to account for your carbon footprint.
I see. Going back to our conversation earlier about you vlogging or doing podcasts to get the message out. I think media consumption is like crazy nowadays, especially that everyone's home. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think is like the single most powerful statement that will get people to realize the severity of the climate problem we're having now, and it'll push them to actually do something about it. And usually, like, we can like put this out through social media so people could hear it.
It's really that temperature change that I could easily point out to. Imagine June. The temperatures outside you right now, probably, or last year in June, what, 35, 36 degrees Celsius? Imagine by 2050 or by 2100, it would be increased to plus 4 degrees. So if, let's say, 35 degrees, so that'd be 40 degrees. Would you really want to go outside at 40 degrees Celsius?
No, not at all.
And then you also have to account for what we call the heat index, for like humidity. And usually in the Philippines, you count it as plus 2 degrees Celsius. So in a very hot June day that's humid, you'd get to 42 degrees Celsius. Would you really want to go outside? Would you really want to go to, on a hike or just walk out, along the sidewalk at 42 degrees Celsius? Probably be drinking lots of water before you do that. Or you'll be you'll be applying sunscreen every day if that's the case. If you're really not sorry about that. If you're really not okay with outside weather.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like I mean, now recently, right, the weather has been crazy. It's been so hot, so I can't imagine like if like it'll get hotter if we don't do something about it. I think that is pretty convincing. You'd want to do something about it because we live in such a tropical country. If it gets even hotter, it's like that's crazy. This is actually my last question. What advice do you have for the youth on the importance of the conservation of our environment and reducing our climate impact?
You can do it at home.
Mm.
That's for one thing. I live in a condominium,
Mm-hmm.
and what my mother started here is like an urban garden on the terrace. That's one way you can help reduce CO2 emissions. Secondly, you really have to be responsible about your energy use, fuel use, whatever you do every day. So it's either you reduce your consumption or you innovate, or you can do both.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, you have to be mindful that every person has his or her own contribution to the global climate situation. Therefore, you have to as like a global citizen, you have to realize that you may play a small role, but you play a role in turning those climate related impacts from negative to positive and create a better world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much, Jonas. You gave such an insightful talk. I think all of us who watched and all of us who listened to you really got something out of that. After this, we're gonna plant more plants and unplug all our appliances that are unnecessary, the ones that we're not using. Okay. Thank you so much for your contribution. Before we end this webinar, do you have anything else to say, or do you have anything to promote whatsoever? You can you're free to say that.
Thank you. Well, we actually tackled a bit about the climate in our podcast, Sustain a Rumble. And I do encourage everyone to listen through Apple Podcast or on Spotify on the issues that we've already tackled before. And these include like misconceptions about climate change, the circular economy, um, the sachet economy, urban transport. It's a really hodgepodge of topics, but the podcast is about sustainable development as an issue in metro cities and actually across the country. And we hope that you would have a listen and um, you'd like, share, and contribute to the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. We will certainly look into that. Again, guys, the Spotify podcast is called Sustain a Rumble. And you can also find Jonas at his Facebook and Instagram. It's also at Sustain a Rumble. So that, with that being said, for everyone who attended this webinar, all of you can get a digital certificate of your attendance. For sure, you want to get yours. If so, just head on to our website, www.esmed.ph, or click on the link that we posted in the comments section below. Make your account and navigate to the title of the webinar that you joined in today. So thank you guys again for joining us today. Before this webinar comes to a close, though, I would like to invite everyone who wants to learn more and increase their knowledge and skills to visit our website. Again, it's www.esmed.ph. We offer a wide range of masterclass courses, including our live learning series, those of which you enroll in based on whatever is relevant to your passion, career, and interests. We hope to see you there in our live learning series. Again, thank you, Jonas. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope that you got something out of that. And yes, together we can try to save the earth. Thank you so much again.